All right, so it's 1:30. We'll get started. A couple people said they couldn't come today, which is totally fine. The recordings are now up. The class recordings are now up under the right heading. They're having some office changes there in the office, so we have to bear with them a little bit, and we'll go from there. Okay. So let me just make sure. Okay. Any questions from last week? We did a lot. Did you all get the massive amounts of recordings I sent you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And they're helpful. Do you need something else?
No, they're very good.
Okay. Good, good, good. Okay. So I like to do a lot of those recordings, Barbara, you'll see, because I feel like you can repeat after me type of thing and get to know what you're doing and then perfect it by reading the whole thing through yourself.
And then playing them over and over.
There you go. So, okay. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over the Friday night structure of the service in the synagogue. And then we're going to start the Friday night Kiddush. I don't think we're going to finish it. And that's where we're going to go. So let me share my screen. I have this nice, and I'll send you this. I have this nice little, you see the pink screen? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hold on. Oh, now you're seeing my email. Hold on.
Oh, we don't see your email.
Oh, don't see your email.
It was only the pink screen.
Let me move this here. Let me move the pink screen over here so I can put up the stuff I want to talk about as well. Okay, now let me share my screen again and make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Okay, there we go. Okay. So Friday evening is pretty easy to follow. You've got Kabbalat Shabbat and Mariv. Those are the two types of the two parts of the service. Whereas Saturday morning, you've got Pesukei de Zimra, Shacharit, Torah service, Musaf, that sort of thing. So, so I'm going to send you this article from Exploring Judaism, which really, really captures Friday night service at synagogues. I'm going to pull a couple of things from it. The first part of Kabbalat Shabbat, and that's exactly what Kabbalat Shabbat means, is welcoming the Shabbat. So it's it's psalms set to song. So it's just a lot of singing, a lot of songs. They will do some of the psalms silently, where they do the first sentence and then come back for the last two sentences. And we'll go over that, in another lesson next week, probably. What those psalms are and that sort of thing. So here's what this Exploring Judaism basically says, that it's a series of secular love poems, just to welcome in the Shabbat. Yedid Nefesh, which is the very first psalm that we say, is Yedid is a friend, and Nefesh is your soul. So you're, again, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the phrase of like welcoming the Shabbat queen, right? So when we're welcoming the Shabbat, we are welcoming a presence of sorts. And so reciting these psalms and singing these tunes are really to elevate us to get to the place where we can, be holy enough to welcome in the Shabbat. Kabbalat Shabbat was based on a Talmudic teaching. It says Rabbi Hanina would wrap himself in a robe on the eve of Shabbat and say, "Come, let us go out to greet the Queen Shabbat." Rabbi Yanai would get dressed on the eve of Shabbat and say, "Come, O bride, come, O bride." So you know, they always ask, why did they conceive of this as a female figure, like a bride or a queen? And they say that because all the other days of the week are devoted to hard work, that Shabbat became feminine to them. Not that women didn't work, but you know, that's exactly how, you know, how they interpreted it back then. So I'm gonna share my screen just to kind of go through the Shabbat service a little bit. I'm not going to make you dizzy with it. And then we're going to go over new share. And then we're going to go over the other pieces of the service. So this is Yadid Nefesh, right? Yadid Nefesh Av HaRachaman. Okay. We go on to, you know, again, more singing. This one happens to be Psalm 95. And again, you can just see even from the English translation, right? Sing unto Adonai a new song. You know, we're really trying to bring out the song and the presence of God here. Now I'm going to scroll a little bit. I'm sorry. At the end of Kabbalat Shabbat is this one, Lecha Dodi. And Lecha Dodi is probably the most well-known, and it has the most tunes that you can probably have. But Lecha Dodi is written as a poem. The first line of each poem is the author of the poem. I'm going to reshare my screen so I could show you that. And in a lot of Sidurim, even this one, it shows you it in bold. See? Shin, Lamed, Mem. And if I go to the next one, Hey, Hey, Lamed, and where is it? And Chaf. And it's Shlomo HaMelech. That is the writer of this piece. And Lecha Dodi, a lot of the verses refer to the city of Jerusalem, right? Because we're going to return to Jerusalem. That's our home. You know, it's been destroyed quite a few times. And in Lecha Dodi, hopefully people all come back to Jerusalem, right? And we even say that in the Seder, Lashana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim, right? We all want to be back in Jerusalem. During the final stanza of Lecha Dodi, everybody rises and turns towards the door. And that is to greet Shabbat, to formally, kind of like we do at a wedding, right? When the bride comes in, we stand up, we turn around towards where she's coming in from the door, and we watch her walk down the aisle. And that's exactly the feeling they want you to have when you're welcoming Shabbat in every single week, that you're welcoming someone of great beauty and presence, you know, into the room. And so that last stanza of Lecha Dodi, you stand and you face the door. So Lecha Dodi, then, you know, right afterwards, there's two more Psalms that you say, and then the Kabbalat Shabbat part is over. Right after, because we're singing so much in Kabbalat Shabbat, when you're in your first week of mourning, when you're during Shiva on a Friday night, if you go to synagogue, you are to sit outside the sanctuary for that first part of the service. And that is because there's way too much joy going on. There's way too much singing going on for you to participate. At the end of Lecha Dodi, they will welcome the mourners into the sanctuary. And they will be given a blessing by everyone there. Let me share this. It's in the Siddur. And it's right after Lecha Dodi in every Siddur. But here, here's the last part of Lecha Dodi. And the very next page, may the divine comfort you along with all the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And they even have it transliterated here because they want everyone to greet the mourners coming in. So that's for someone who's going to shul on Friday night, during their Shiva, that is important that they feel welcomed by the community. They haven't yet finished Shiva. They haven't really been to shul, because for the most part, in most situations, shul comes to them to have their
Sorry, I don't know how to
right.
set that up.
So, okay. So that is the Kabbalat Shabbat part of Friday night. Okay. And then we're going to go to Mariv, but in between Kabbalat Shabbat and Mariv, in an Orthodox synagogue, you'll do a Mishnah study. We tend to, in the conservative world, have the rabbi's sermon. And he'll usually give a short sermon, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, talking about this week's parsha, or anything that, he or she wants to say. You'll follow it up with Dishta Rabbanan, which is after you there we go. After you say a text, after you study a text, you say this Kaddish. Very similar to a mourner's Kaddish, but a couple of different words here and there. And then we go into a Mariv. Now, Mariv is said every night, right? So what is so special about Shabbat Mariv? Right? The only thing that's different for Shabbat Mariv is we add Vishamru into the liturgy, and any Shabbat, anything where we're saying, we're blessing Shabbat and that sort of thing. But other than that, it's very standard to other Mariv services. The Amidah is said silently, as it is always at Mariv. And the difference on Friday evening, there are only 7 blessings as opposed to the 18 blessings that you would normally say during an Amidah. So let's see. And then after that, you have your concluding prayers, Aleinu, Kaddish, and then you do Yigdal. Some congregations don't do Yigdal and they do Adon Olam instead. And some congregations will put, like I said, after the Amidah, Kiddush in. And it's kind of a shortened Kiddush. It's not the full Friday night Kiddush. It's, I would say, the second paragraph of Kiddush as opposed to the first paragraph of Kiddush. And that's what we're going to go over today. Before we go on to the text, any questions about that? And I'll send you that slide. Any questions about that structure of the service? Any questions about how your synagogue does things? Is it different? Is it? No questions. Okay.
Sorry, Lymor, and I apologize for joining late, but is there going to be a chance to sort of get into like the functionality of each prayer within that structure at some point?
So on Kabbalat Shabbat, those prayers are Psalms. So those are pretty easy to probably look up, and I'm going to send you a page that explains Friday night service called Exploring Judaism. And there's some links to some of the Psalms, so you can go in and kind of study yourself, that sort of thing. You know, when we go through them, we can talk about them a little bit, but we're not really going to go into any in-depth on that. But if you have questions, I'm happy to get you some answers if I don't know the answer,
Okay.
which is more or less probably, I probably don't know the answer. So, but anyway, okay. So let's go into the text of Kiddush. So let me go to page, I think it's 51 here. Yes, so I'm on page 51, I think, of the Lev Shalem. And I'm going to put it up on the screen and zoom in. Okay, are you going to let me zoom in? Yes, you are. No, you're not. There you are. Okay. Okay. So we will zoom in. Okay. So this is, like I said, what you say at shul, which is the second part of Kiddush. At home, there's a preamble sort of thing, and we'll go over that next week. I didn't want to we did so much text last week, and I gave you so many recordings that I really wanted to try and lay off that this week. So we'll do a little bit. If it gets overwhelming, raise your hand and we'll stop. But I really want to try and get the Kiddush in before we start talking about Passover, which I think, hold on, let me just take a quick look here. Okay, so we have one more week before we do Passover. So according to my plan, which we can change my plan, right? This is your class. So if there's something you want to do or not do, then we can change that. But my plan was to do 3 to 4 weeks and start on the 17th so that you're closer to Passover and you remember it all.
What page of the Siddur are you on?
I'm
It's
on page
55.
51, 55. Okay, 55.
Okay, that's what was throwing me. You said,
Sorry.
okay, got it.
Okay, thanks, Judy. All right, so let's do, I'm just trying to think how I want to do this. Let me say a line and then I'll call on you to say a line, to repeat that line. That way you're hearing it twice. Savri Chaverai
Can you do the
Chaverotai.
title though? It says Kiddush
Kiddush Leleil Shabbat,
Shabbat, right?
which is Shabbat evening. Leil, Laila, Leil means evening. So this is Kiddush for the evening of Shabbat. Okay. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Okay, you all know that, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. Yay. All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu bemitzvotav ve'ratza vanu. Remember, when you've got a vav with a dot on top, after the shva, it says vo. It's one of those exceptions to the rule. So here's where it plays out in real life. All right. Judy, you want to take this line here, starting with Asher?
Me?
You, Judy, yes.
Okay. Asher Kiddushanu Ba'itz wait. Ba'mitzvotav
Perfect.
Veratza Banu.
Perfect. All right.
Ooh.
The next line is Veshabbat Kodsho. See how the Kamatz Katan is here, right? Compare this to Kiddishanu Kodsho Be'ahava Uv Ratzon hinchilanu. All right, Jamie, you're up.
Okay. Vishabat, Kodsho, Be'ahava, Uvratzon, Hinchilanu.
Perfect. Zikaron lemaase vereshit. Judith.
Zikaron lema say
Uh-huh.
vera sheets.
Right. Vereshit.
Vera sheets.
Perfect. All right. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh. Barbara, you get that one.
Okay. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh.
Perfect. Zecher litziat mitzrayim. Judy?
Okay. I lost my place.
Zecher.
Zekaro. Am I on the right line?
3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, just show
line
me.
down.
Oh, that one.
Yep.
Okay. Zikaron,
Nope. 2 lines down from that one.
2 lines down for that.
Zecher.
Oh, okay. Zeker Litza at Mitzrayim.
Yep. So that second word is li-si-at.
Litziat.
Yep. Okay. Ki vanu vacharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. Jamie.
Okay. Kivanu, Vacharta, Ve'utanu, Kidashta, Mikol Ha'amim.
Good. Veshabat kod shecha be'ahava uv ratzon hin chaltanu. Judith?
The Shabbat kad
Could. This
oh,
one
could,
gets
oh, yes,
both
yeah.
time. Yep.
Yeah, and you just read it. But could shecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchal hanu.
Perfect.
Hinchal tanu, right?
Tanu. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Baruch ata Adonai mekadesh hashabbat, Barbara.
Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
You got it. Okay.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How come the 2 lines above are bold?
Yeah.
Because that is where, when you're doing it in shul, everyone joins in.
Oh.
All right. So when I'm going to sing it now to you in the tune that you normally would sing it on a regular Friday night. That's not a holiday or anything like that. And hopefully you'll see that when you get to those bold lines, that's where you're going to recognize it. And I say this all the time, that sometimes when you know something by heart and then you go to read it out of the Siddur, you're like, oh, really? I didn't know that was a t or a ra, like, because you've just been saying it the way you've been saying it for so long by rote, by listening to other people around you. So like the word kid shanu, let me get my cursor here. I gotta find out how to use Zoom for a better cursor, but here's a cursor, right? Here's Kidshanu. So when you read that in Hebrew, it's Kidshanu, but you'll hear people sing a Kideshanu.
Mhm.
It's just the way it sounds good with the melody, right? It's not quote unquote proper Hebrew, but it's the way it sounds better with the melody. And that's a lot of the things that we're going to be learning. You'll see that people are pronouncing them or putting the emphasis on words that aren't, it's one of my biggest pet peeves when people go, and again, it's no big deal, right? But it's one of my biggest pet peeves when people go to make up their own tune for something, because they're not putting the emphasis on the right part of the word. It drives me crazy as someone who knows how to read that word. But it sounds good. So
Well, Lymor, I wasn't in your beginner Hebrew class. I was with Carol Green.
mhm.
It drove her absolutely bonkers when people mispronounced a word, because she said, for the exact reason you're saying, that you learned it that way because you were sitting next to somebody, or lots of people who mispronounced it because that's the way they learned it, and they weren't there. Even if they could read it, they weren't reading it. They were doing it from memory. And she said, if you can read Hebrew and you're reading it, it just drives you crazy because it's mispronouncing it.
Right.
And she gave a lot of English examples of how you would say English incorrectly if it were your second language, and how that just drives native English speakers.
Yeah. And by the way, that's my husband. My husband, doesn't know how to read Hebrew. My husband learned it just by osmosis, sitting in shul and, and that sort of thing. And, his parents were not religious. His parents sent them to Hebrew school, but, they really never went to synagogue. And so when he got involved in USY, when he was younger, in order to be in a leadership position in USY, you had to take on a responsibility of leading services and doing these things. And so he learned it for that reason. But he still, to this day, I'm sitting next to him in shul and I'm like, what did he say? And I say to him, like, do you want me to correct you? And he's like, I don't. I'm like, okay, fine. So I don't. And because that's his wish. And, when you're married for 25 years, you just do it, they don't want it. He doesn't want to be corrected. So I'm like, okay, just shh, like, don't say that one out loud. So it drives me crazy with him in my ear. But anyway. All right, so I'm going to sing this to you in the tune. I have this recorded also. Let me see how I have it recorded also. Let me see what I have here. Kiddush. I have Kiddush and song, Kiddush real time, and Kiddush word for word. Okay, good. So you've got a lot of options on how to learn it. This is good. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsha be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. So Judy, do you see where that comes in, where the kivanu v'charta comes in? That's where everyone joins in. In some congregations, they come in at ki hu yom techila. So I think they try to figure out what's the most popular and do it that way. So that's how they do it at shul. I want to find. I think this is it. Hold on one second. Here it is. Okay, so let me share a new screen. Okay, and this I'll be sharing with you when we go, well, you know, next week when we go to talk about the Friday night at home rituals. But you see here, this is where we started. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen, and we did this whole thing, right? There's a whole paragraph that you do at night at home, right? ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה. Right? You go through that whole thing. I call it like a preamble. That's not in the Siddur. So we'll do that next week when we do the home rituals. Oops, where's my Siddur? So many screens here. Okay. Okay. Any questions on this part of the Kiddush? Do we want to look at the English and analyze it a little bit? Okay. Creator of the fruit of the vine is the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen, right? And then sovereign of time and space, who's desired us and who has provided us with the path to holiness through the observance of mitzvot, and who lovingly and willingly has bestowed upon us Shabbat, a measure of God's holiness, a symbol of the work of creation, for it is the first of sacred times, a symbol of the exodus of Egypt. You have chosen us and sanctified us amongst all peoples by lovingly and willingly bestowed on us your holy Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, who makes Shabbat holy. So, why do you think it brings in the middle a symbol of the exodus of Egypt? Why is Shabbat a symbol of the exodus of Egypt? Judy, I see your lips moving, but I do not hear you, but you're not muted. You're talking to yourself. Okay,
I'm
fine.
talking to myself.
That's fine.
But
Okay.
maybe it's because at that point we were able to do something that we were wanted and able to do, where when we were in Egypt, it was not possible to practice Shabbat.
So we didn't have Shabbat
Okay.
until we got the 10 commandments, right? It's a fourth commandment. It's the fourth commandment. We didn't have Shabbat, but we did know we wanted a day of rest when we were working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day in Egypt. We knew we wanted a day of rest. But we didn't have the concept of a day of rest until we got the 10 commandments after we were freed from Egypt. And so it's kind of like a chicken egg thing, right? Like, did we get Shabbat because we worked so hard in Egypt that we needed a day of rest? Or did we get Shabbat with the commandments and then said, oh, this would have been nice to have when we were working? Like if we had worked in Egypt and had a day off, would it have been so bad? I mean, yes, it would have, because clearly they worked them bone breaking and, you know, and if you weren't good enough, then sometimes you got beat to death. So yes, it still would have been just as bad. But I feel like we bring this in every week on Shabbat to remind us that we have Shabbat. You know, we went through this awful thing and now we have Shabbat. I feel like it's the same thing when you get married and you break the glass. We're going to remember one of the darkest times of our people when the temple was destroyed on one of the happiest days of your life. So even though you're welcoming the Shabbat and you just went through this whole Kabbalat Shabbat and Mariv and, and all these great things, and you're welcoming the Shabbat queen and the bride and all this stuff. And now you're going to mention, by the way, you suffered in Egypt so that you could have this. I think that's, something we do in our religion, whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I mean, I think it's good to always remember your humble beginnings or where you came from or things like that. But I also think it kind of puts a damper on the mood when you're, ready to have Shabbat dinner with your family, and here you are talking about this.
No, I think it is good because it's a reminder that you shouldn't act entitled. That you have you've come from nothing, and that you have to remember that, because there are others who are still trapped.
Right. No, I agree that we always have to remember where we came from, and we always have to be humble, even in the good times, and remember our history. I mean, that's our whole, the whole reason we do Passover is to teach this from generation to generation.
Exactly.
The whole reason we have Holocaust Remembrance Day is so that we don't forget, and I think that's a theme in our religion, and I think it's a good theme.
Yep.
But that's like passing the Torah from one generation to another during a bat mitzvah, or
Yeah.
bar mitzvah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go even further and tell you that's, let me stop the share here. I'll go even further and say, this is why I keep kosher. Not because I don't want to eat a cheeseburger or anything like that, but I feel like when you keep kosher, you have to think before you put food in your mouth. What am I eating? When did I eat the last thing? You say a bracha before you put food in your mouth, right? And it's the difference between animals and people, right? Animals, you put food in front of them, they eat it. We're not animals. We are a thought, we are an educated, thoughtful being. And so when you go to eat, a piece of cheese, you're like, wait a minute, did I have chicken? When did I have it? What is it? That sort of thing. And you're really thinking about what you're doing. And I think that sets us apart from, from other beings out there that will just eat whatever they're given. And like you were saying, Barbara, that we have to remember, who we are and where we come from and what we are. How many times did I send my kids out the door and, say to them, if they were going to a Shabbaton, like, don't forget who you're representing. You're representing your family, your synagogue, your school, you're this, you're that, like, behave, do, all of that. And it gives you pause, my husband says when he wears a kippah out in public, it gives him pause. Like, he's not going to, we live in the New York area. So, he was in the airport the other day and some guy like started yelling at someone else. And he was like, okay, should I go approach them? What should I do? What should I, whatever. And he says when he's wearing, he doesn't wear a kippah all the time. He used to, but he doesn't anymore. When he used to wear a kippah, he used to think twice because he knows he's representing like the Jewish people, and should he say something, then some innocent standby will say, well, that's how Jews act. And so I think it, it runs all throughout. And so, here we are on Friday night doing Kiddush and remembering that the reason that we have Shabbat, the reason that we have these things is because we needed rest from all of the hard work we did in Egypt.
Can I just ask about that? Because I didn't actually realize that was the kind of the dominant narrative. I thought it was just because God took a day of rest when he created the world, and that's where the Shabbat came, like the...
Yeah, but it wasn't a commandment. It wasn't something we had to do until we got the 10 commandments. Like, we didn't have any laws that we followed or any like that. They were all they were customs. You know, maybe we did have Shabbat and maybe it was a custom. I'll ask some of my rabbi friends and see what they have to say. I'll report back to you next week.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
But yeah, it is very interesting. I'll definitely, I'm having dinner with 2 rabbis on Tuesday night for Purim. So I'll definitely bring that up and ask that question.
And then my other question, because you mentioned, you know, the blessings, and I don't make blessings during regular meals, but I'm curious to what extent there's a difference. Like, is there a separate blessing for wine during the week, and how dissimilar is it from the blessing we make on Shabbat? And same thing for the food.
Okay, so when you break bread, you say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's really the blessing you're going to say when you break bread. When you break bread, when you drink wine, right? It's like a special drink, and so there's a special blessing for wine. When you drink scotch, you say shehakol niyeh bidvaro. It's not the same blessing as wine. And you don't necessarily say a blessing for everything on your plate, right? So if you're eating a meal and you start with the breaking of the bread, then you say hamotzi. If you're eating a meal that has no bread in it, then you're going to say shakol niyeh bidvaro, that everything should be in its time, right? And that's what you say when you drink soda or water, or, you know, anything that's not a fruit or a vegetable or a sweet or a whatever. So if you're saying blessings on everything during the week, you're just going to say your hamotzi and go on. If you have a glass of wine with dinner, you may say just the one line, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. You're not going to say all of that other stuff. That is only relegated for Shabbat.
And then I know we're going to get to this next week, but I'm just, so for the at-home version, is that also the long version, or is the short version sufficient on Shabbat?
First of all, whatever you do in your home is sufficient
Sure,
for you, right? I mean, you know,
I
but
guess
the proper, you know, the proper one, the proper for Friday night is to do the preamble and the whole thing.
I see.
Saturday afternoon, it's only that bottom part.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So, and Saturday afternoon, we say Vishamru first, and then we go into and say the Borei Pri Hagafen and everything after that. So, and by the way, these are festival blessings also. You just are adding the festival in there.
Mhm.
So, and it's a little bit of a different tune, but the festival blessing is very much like this, except for you're replacing Shabbat with either the name of the festival or Yom Tov, which means festival.
Mhm.
So, okay, no other questions. This is good.
Well,
Or you're overwhelmed. Go ahead, Barbara.
You got off a little bit on a tangent of talking about your husband going outside with or without his kippah, and not wearing it as much now. Is that because of the anti-Semitism that's rampant?
No, just change in lifestyle. You know, he used to be a kosher caterer, so he used to wear his kippah all the time.
Okay.
And now he doesn't work in the Jewish world, so he doesn't wear it all the time.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's
I have one quick anecdote.
Yeah.
In 2015, I think it was, I live in Washington, D.C. My husband and I had met his cousin who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, and his wife for a few days they were staying in New York City for a while. And so we went up and met them for a few days in New York City. And we were all coming out of Bloomingdale's, you know where that is. And a group of very young people ascended. I guess there's a subway stop there. And they had come out of the subway and they were carrying a lulav and an etrog, or several of them. And so I suddenly was aware of what time of year it was, which hadn't been in my mind before that. And so recognizing that recognition obviously showed on my face. And one of the young women approached me and said, "So you're Jewish?" And I'm like, yes, but, and she says, so we'll say the blessings. And I'm like, no, we're on our way somewhere. And I'm like, no, I don't have time. And she says, oh, and she looked so crestfallen. And I said, I'm sorry, but, and then there's suddenly this large hand on my shoulder. And I turn around and look up, and there's this very large Black man in a security outfit. And he says to me, ma'am, do not let these young people down. You're Jewish. They just want to say the blessings with you. You have time to do this. Do it. And so there I am with a Shehechianu right there in the middle of New York City. And I'm like, this is only in New York City does this happen.
Right, right. So that's hilarious. So, you know, it's funny, my daughter said she applied for something like a fellowship of some sort for young Jewish professionals, whatever, and that's what she wants to go into. And she had the interview and they start talking and she realizes, wait a minute, this is an Orthodox group. I totally didn't get that from their website. And so she politely then said, hey, listen, you know, sounds like a great organization, but, you know, I'm not really, this isn't, you know, for me, you know, I wear a tallis, I wear tefillin, I'm, you know, this, that, the other. And the woman said to her, well, hear about my journey and it will change your mind. So then she listened for 15 minutes about this woman's journey. And Maya's like, yeah, I'm not interested. And she said to me, I felt kind of bad, but, you know, I wasn't going to get involved in this organization that like is pretty much, they just want to convert you to Orthodoxy. And it was really for, you know, it was really like for intro to Jewish professionals, blah, 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 like, you know, for people that maybe weren't religious, but going to be doing something Jewish. And so it was really like an outreach thing for Orthodox Judaism. So yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. And, you know, but you didn't have to do it, but I mean, you did, and it probably felt good, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It was funny.
It's like when Chabad comes and they're like, you know, to
Yeah.
the men, come put tefillin on, come put tefillin on. So, you know, my son's a freshman at Michigan State, and the first week of school, they do like this club fair. And so he walked up to the Chabad table and they're talking, and the rabbi says, come put tefillin on. And he says, I did already this morning. And he says, you did? Did you say a bracha when you did it? He goes, well, I davened all of Shacharit. So I must have. I said lots of brachas. Now, I'll be honest, I know he does put on tefillin every day. I don't know that he davened Shacharit every day, but maybe he does. I don't know. But he does wear tefillin. He does put on tefillin every day and at least say the Shema. And so then the Rebbitzin said to him, well, if you put on tefillin every day, what are you doing here at Michigan State? He said, going to college like a normal 18-year-old boy. And so then the Chabad Rebbitzin kind of like through his Instagram or whatever found me, and she was messaging me and all of this. And it's so nice to have an observant boy here and blah, 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 blah. Do you think he'd want to lead services and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know. You should talk to him. Like, he's 18 now. I can't make him do anything. And, you know, it's just very funny. He actually goes to both the Hillel and the Chabad, pretty much because he doesn't eat meat that's not kosher. He'll eat like everything else outside the house, like, you know, obviously not shellfish, whatever, but he'll eat, you know, dairy, hot dairy, cold dairy, whatever. He's not so religious. But, you know, to get kosher meat, so he'll go to Hillel, which is at 6 o'clock dinner, and Chabad dinner is at 7:30. So he'll go to both. Because he's a growing Jewish boy. And actually the Chabad Rebbitzin puts a little package together for him to take home so he has a meal the next day also, which is kind of nice. But yeah, so I mean,
I'm sorry, could we, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. When you're done, could we go
yes,
and
I'm
just
done.
remind us like where we're all from? I'm just curious, like what
Sure.
city?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm from the New Jersey suburbs right near New York. And my husband's from Chicago, from the northern suburbs of Chicago. Judy Schwartz, where are you from?
I'm from New Rochelle, New York, right outside the city by about 30 minutes. And my husband's from the city.
Jamie?
Hi, I'm in Northern Virginia, outside of Washington, DC, near Ruston, Virginia.
Barbara?
I live in Washington, DC with my husband, and we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma for almost forever. But we've been here since 2013.
Right. Judy? The other Judy?
I live in Saratoga, California. I'm originally from New Orleans, but I've been here for many years.
Nice. And Mariella?
I am from Bogota, Colombia, South America,
Wow.
And where do you live there now, Mariella?
and I live in Tampa, Florida.
Ah, okay. Awesome. And Judith, where are you from?
I live in Northern Virginia as well, in a town called McLean. And work in DC. So yeah, nice to, I guess Jamie's in the neighborhood and Barbara's not too far off. And I spent a lot of time in Westchester, so close to New Rochelle.
Oh, yeah, where?
Pleasantville, that's where my in-laws live.
Nice. So,
Barbara, I have a question for you. Did you go to Case Western Reserve?
Who are you asking?
You.
Oh, no, I did not. I'm sorry.
Oh, you look like very somebody that I saw on a
I
Zoom. from
I always look like somebody.
there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
and are you all involved in your sisterhoods in your synagogues or?
Yes.
A little.
Okay,
My sisterhood is terrific.
good, good. Wonderful. All right, ladies, I will send you, what am I going to send you? Oh, I'm going to send you the Kiddush recordings. And I will send you that, yeah, I'll send you the Kiddush recordings and the Friday night slide, the pink slide. And next week we'll go over the rest of Kiddush. And we will go over the Friday night at-home rituals, right? There's Shalom Aleichem, blessing of the children, that whole thing. Okay.
I'm going to try and be in class. I'm coming to Washington, DC next weekend. So I'm hoping to be in the hotel right on time to be able to Wi-Fi in.
Okay, good, good, good. And what was I going to say? I was going to say that, and then we're going to start Passover. So if there's anything that go pull out a Haggadah if you have one, or look at one online and see if there's something that you want to go over. I'm going to go over all the major blessings of, of washing the hands, the karpas, the what you say when you have the matzah and the charoset and the bitter herbs and all that stuff. I'm going to go over all those blessings, but if there's anything else you want to to learn, everybody's Seder is different, obviously, and I want to try and incorporate as much as possible so that you feel more comfortable in your Seder this year than you did in past years.
I will miss those 2 sessions. I'll be here next week, but then the week after that and the week after that, I will be traveling.
Okay. Well, there's the recording, and still, Barbara, if there's something you want to learn,
Right.
we'll put it in the 3rd session.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, my husband and my son run the Seder, and they kind of compete with each other over who knows the most and who gets to instruct everybody else the most. So
So you just stay out of it.
yeah.
Okay. Sometimes that's good too. So, all right.
I cook.
Thank you.
I mean, we're so tired from cooking, it doesn't matter. It feels like, and a lot of times you're cooking for both nights at the same time and whatever. I have a friend she's got 3 daughters, and she grew up in a family also with 3 daughters. And they have this tradition that 2 nights before Pesach, they basically make all the meat. They make them in 15 different ways and whatever for the entirety of Passover, so that they don't have to cook a big thing again.
Oh,
And then they just add during the week vegetables or whatever they're going to add, potatoes or whatever. But all the meat they cook. So they have this like major fest of chicken 5 ways and beef 4 ways and fish 3 ways and all that stuff. So
I'll
that's
go.
too much for me. I can't think ahead after the Seder.
Thank you, Lymor.
All right,
All right.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat
Have
shalom.
a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.